Hello, everybody. Hope you've all had a wonderful week. I am so excited to be here today to do another session of Open Source Thursdays. Hope you can all hear me fine. This week it's going to be just me, but that doesn't mean the fun stops. We're going to be doing a little bit of setting up a local copy of a code repository on your machine and getting that to run. So, as Jess and I usually do every week, we're going to set up a list of learning outcomes that we hope for you to take away this week. And these are as follows. First off, we're going to do a little bit of digging into understanding what it means to run a project locally. We're going to be looking a little bit into GitHub, how to fork, how to clone, branches, remotes. We're going to be going a little bit into really digging into this understanding between what a local and a remote copy is, knowing that we can really mess around with a local copy of a code base and not be nervous to mess something up in GitHub. Should we run into any problems, we'll be able to know where to go for help, and following these instructions to get up and running to run the app, and finally get that app up and running. If you missed last week's session, what we did was set up, as you can see here on my computer, what we did was do the preliminary steps to set up FreeCodeCamp on my computer. Now, again, if you weren't here, we set this up on a Windows machine using WSL, or Windows Subsystem for Linux for short. So now the next step is to get this actually up and running. So let's dive right in. As said, today is just me, but I'll be keeping an eye on the chat. So if you all have any questions or you want to contribute something, or anything that comes to mind, please let me know. Let's hop right in. So what we've got here is the FreeCodeCamp contribution guide on the left side of my screen. Now, what we've got set up here is, as said, all of my environment is now set up so that I can run FreeCodeCamp. The last thing I did last week was run nodv and npmv. These are two commands that I've run on my Linux, on my Windows subsystem for Linux, to check what the version of Node.js and npm are, Node Package Manager, are. Because as listed in these requirements, Node.js needs to be 14.x, that is any version that starts with 14, and npm needs to be version 6.x, that is any version of npm that starts with 6. So we're all good to go here. We can carry on now with the actual setup of the app locally on my computer. So what does locally mean in this sense? Because FreeCodeCamp now is running on the internet. It's live on the worldwide internets, right? So what does that mean? What does that mean when compared to being locally on my machine? You see, a server is what we usually connect to with our browser in order to load up a website. But what is a server? And in contrast, what is a client? Now, I'm going to try my best. Unfortunately, my metaphor game is going to be only half as good without Jess here today, but I'll try my best. So, a server is nothing more than a program that runs on a computer that just waits for requests. So a server will wait for a request from my browser to say, hey, can I get the website for FreeCodeCamp? And the server will say, right you are. I see here you are a browser. I will give you this website here, and you can carry on with your day. I'll see you later. Now, what we can do when developing a website or a web application on our machine, we can set up a locally running server in what's called the local network. You might have seen before localhost. That's what we're going to be setting up here. So let's get that up and running. Now, the first thing we're going to need to do is get the code from FreeCodeCamp right into my machine. And the instructions that FreeCodeCamp has so kindly provided include forking a repository on GitHub. So let's just go through these steps together today. As said, if you have any questions at any point, please let me know, and we'll try our best to get that up and running. So let's go. Forking is a step where you get your own copy of FreeCodeCamp's main repository, aka repo, on GitHub. So repo is a very commonly used term for short term for repository, so I'm going to be using the two interchangeably. So this is essential as it allows you to work on your own copy of FreeCodeCamp on GitHub, or to download or clone your repository to work on locally. Later, you'll be able to request changes to be pulled into the main repository from your fork by a pull request. Now, we've mentioned pull requests in the past. These are gifts, as we used in our metaphors, that we give to the repository's maintainers to say, hey, I've made these changes and I think they'd be helpful for you. So here's a handy tip. The main repository at github.com/freecodecamp/freecodecamp, which we've looked at in the past. I've got it open on my browser here. This is the repository for FreeCodeCamp. Is often referred to as the upstream repository. Your fork, remember that's a copy, at github.com/yourusername/freecodecamp is often referred to as the origin repository. Your username will be replaced with your GitHub username. So my username on GitHub, for example, is Ramón H. So my FreeCodeCamp fork will be called Ramón H/FreeCodeCamp. So let's follow these steps to fork this repository. So we'll go to the FreeCodeCamp repository on GitHub. You know what I'm going to do, folks? I'm going to open up GitHub here on a second page on the right side of my screen so that we can have both open at the same time. So go to the FreeCodeCamp repository, click on the fork button in the upper right-hand corner. You know what? Let me know if I'm zooming out too much, but I just want to make it look like it does on the desktop. So I hope that's okay. If it's too small, please let me know. Click the fork button at the upper right-hand corner on the interface, which is up here. Let's click on that. So I've already forked FreeCodeCamp for CodeSee, but not actually for my account. So that's what I'm going to be doing next. Fork again to a different account. So I'm going to click on here. Will be created as Ramón H/FreeCodeCamp. So now I'm making a fork of FreeCodeCamp on my account. So now I can have a copy of FreeCodeCamp on GitHub that's my own. It is a copy of FreeCodeCamp's codebase, but it's mine to mess around with. So if I make any changes, I don't need to worry about messing up FreeCodeCamp, because this is going to be sort of like my playground, my sandbox. It's going to be for me to mess around in. So we'll be just fine. So after the repository has been forked, you will be taken to your copy of FreeCodeCamp repository at this URL, github.com/yourusername/freecodecamp, which I see up here, Ramón H/FreeCodeCamp. We even have, this is what I love about this documentation. It even shows with animated GIFs, how to fork this. So this is really nice. Next, we're going to clone my fork. Cloning is where you download a copy of a repository from a remote location that is either owned by you or by somebody else. In your case, this remote location is your fork of FreeCodeCamp's repository that should be available at this URL. So let's find out what exactly cloning is. Fortunately, GitHub provides documentation, and FreeCodeCamp very kindly links to that documentation. When you create a repository on GitHub, it exists as a remote repository. You can clone your repository to create a local copy. Here comes that local differentiation. A local copy on your computer and sync between the two locations. So once I make a local copy of my fork and it's on my machine, I can mess around with it, make all the changes I want, and they will always be on my computer until I very explicitly push those changes to be live on my fork. Remember, not on the original FreeCodeCamp repository. So still within our sandbox, still within our playground. So all safe. So let's find out how to make that actual copy. Oh, we got a warning. If you're working on a WSL2 Linux distro, remember Windows Subsystem for Linux, which I'm working in, you might get a performance and stability issues by running this project in a folder which is shared between Windows and WSL2, e.g. MNTC users. This is a folder that exists within Windows. Therefore, we recommend to clone this repo into a folder which is mainly used by your WSL to Linux distribution and not directly shared with Windows, e.g. projects. See this GitHub issue for further information about this problem. Let's look into that a little bit, try and understand what's going on here. So what's going on is that, remember last week we mentioned that WSL2, or Windows Subsystem for Linux, is running in its own virtual machine, or VM. So it's kind of existing separately from my actual Windows computer. However, the way Windows Subsystem for Linux is set up, we have lots of they've gone through to great lengths to set up lots of links between Linux and Windows so that I can run apps a lot more easily. So back in my Linux distribution here, I've got a folder here within the Linux distribution. So I'm all safe and sound for being able to run FreeCodeCamp there. So open a terminal, which I've got running here, /command prompt /shell in your projects directory, which I've called coding open source, but this can be any name that you like. Clone your fork of FreeCodeCamp, replacing your username with your GitHub username. So we've got a command here that we can copy and paste. So I'm just going to click here on copy to keyboard. And warning, you're about to paste text that contains multiple lines. Ooh, I hope that's okay. Actually, let's do it. Let's do this the good citizen way and type it out completely. So git clone depth equals 1 https github.com/RamonH. What else we got here? FreeCodeCamp.kit. FreeCodeCamp.git. Ooh, that's a lot of stuff happening. But it looks like we're receiving objects, so that looks good. This will download the entire FreeCodeCamp repository to your projects directory. No, I was wondering what that depth equals 1 was. Creates a shallow clone of your fork with only the most recent history /commit. Interesting. Now that you've downloaded a copy of your fork, you will need to set up an upstream remote to the parent repository. As mentioned earlier, the main repository is referred as the upstream repository. Your fork is referred to as the origin repository. You will need a reference from your local clone to the upstream repository in addition to the origin repository. This sounding, oh yeah, so we've got origin being my fork and upstream being the original FreeCodeCamp /FreeCodeCamp. This is so that you can sync changes from the main repository without the requirement of forking and cloning repeatedly. Change directory to the new FreeCodeCamp directory by typing cd FreeCodeCamp. Let's do that. Actually, something fun. Since I've typed a little bit of it, I can press tab and it'll autocomplete for me, which is pretty handy. So, add a remote reference to the main FreeCodeCamp repository. So we've got some stuff here to add. Git remote add upstream. Remember, that's the original FreeCodeCamp. github.com/freecodecamp/freecodecamp.git. Okay, let's type that out. Git remote add upstream. HTTPS github.com/freecodecamp. I'm making sure to put in the capital letters for code and camp there. FreeCodeCamp.git. Ensure that the configuration looks correct by typing git remote-v. Git remote-v. Okay, this is looking a little bit condensed, folks. I'm going to just reduce the size just a tiny bit. I think I'm making it bigger. There we go. Let's see. The output should look something like below, replacing your username with your GitHub username. So we should see origin with my username /freecodecamp.git, and upstream being FreeCodeCamp, FreeCodeCamp/git. And there I can see origin is mine, and upstream is FreeCodeCamp. So we are in the clear here. So now we can get to actually running FreeCodeCamp locally. So now that you have a local copy of FreeCodeCamp, you can follow these instructions to run it locally. This will allow you to preview edits to pages as they would appear on the learning platform, work on UI-related issues and enhancements, debug and fix issues with the application servers and client apps. If you do run into issues, first perform a web search for your issue and see if it already has been answered. If you cannot find a solution, please search our GitHub issues page for a solution and report the issue if it had not yet been reported. And as always, feel free to ask questions on the contributors category on our forum or our chat server. This is really nice. FreeCodeCamp has gone a long way to really giving folks the opportunity that if they find issues or if they run into any troubles, a sort of like checklist of things that they can do to figure out what's wrong. First, a web search, so you can use whichever you prefer, if you like DuckDuckGo, or I think it's called Ecosia, to look up. I usually like to just plug in the error message and see what I get, or just go into GitHub issues. Let's take a look at GitHub issues. We looked into those a few weeks ago. Yeah, what we can do is actually, what I like to do is usually look up for example, crash up here at the top. Look up crash in this repository, and there we can see there's quite a few issues to do with crashes. So if we click here, we can see website crashes when React component renders itself. Here we can see and look, okay, maybe this bug I'm experiencing or this issue I'm having has come up before, and we can use that to figure out, okay, maybe somebody's run into it before. Look into the discussion and see, okay, how did they fix it, or or is this being looked into for a future fix? They also have a forum, super nice. Let's have a look at that. Yeah, they've got a forum and we can sign up and ask questions accordingly. And finally, we've got a chat server. So really there's a whole bunch of options. Let's look at this tip here. You may skip running FreeCodeCamp locally if you're simply editing files. For instance, performing a rebase or resolving merge conflicts. We'll get into those at another episode. You can always return to this part of the instructions later. You should only skip this step if you do not need to run the apps on your machine, which we do. So let's do that. Configuring dependencies. The default API keys and environment variables are stored in the file sample.env. This file needs to be copied to a new file called .env that is accessed dynamically during the installation step. So we've got some instructions here. Create a copy of the sample env and name it env, populated with the necessary API keys and secrets. So we have instructions for macOS/Linux or Windows. Now, even though we are in Windows, remember we're in WSL, so we're going to follow the Linux instructions. So we're going to type in cp sample.env, env. And what that's going to do is copy the contents of sample.env to the file .env. And what we can do, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty curious as to what's going on there. So let's open that up and have a look. What I'm going to do is, as in last week's instructions, I've installed VS Code. We can open that up now. And it opened up on my other screen. So I'm just going to drag it over, make it nice and big. Yeah, that should do it. And yeah, we'll update you later. So let's look at that .env file. So what we're doing here is defining a series of variables that allow us to run FreeCodeCamp. So if we're running this, say, locally on our machine or live on a server, these variables are plugged into the app to allow it to just get started without much intervention from us. Great, so they've already predefined here a bunch of these that we're going to need, as said, to run FreeCodeCamp locally on our machine. I always like looking at these. I got PayPal setup stuff, deployment environment. Languages are going to be by default in English. Hope that's fine. Show or hide work in progress changes in the progress challenges. Interesting. Application paths, debugging mode keys. So we don't need to worry about too much about these other than knowing that these are going to be used by default in FreeCodeCamp. So let's close that for now. The keys in the env file are not required to be changed to run the app locally. Whew, good. You can leave the default values copied over from sample env as is. Keep in mind that if you want to use services like Auth0 or Algolia, you'll need to acquire your own API keys for those services and edit the entries accordingly in the env file. What are these services? Let's look them up real quick. Auth0. I'm just going to look that up real quick. So Auth0 appears to be some kind of access platform. It's an easy way to implement adaptable authentication and authorization. Is an easy to implement adaptable authentication and authorization platform. That's to do things like setting up users to log in, and depending on what kind of user you are, you can log into different pages and that sort of thing. Let's look at that other one though, Algolia. Never heard of it. Let's have a look. Algolia. Here we go. Site search and discovery. Okay, this looks to be a platform for looking up for looking stuff up within websites, for doing search inside websites. I could be wrong. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Search as a service. There we go. I hope that's big enough. Don't want to mess with it too much. There we go. Algolia search as a service and full suite of APIs allow teams to easily develop tailored fast search and discovery experiences that delight and convert. So there you go. All right. Now we're going to get to the actual installing of dependencies. This step will install the dependencies required for the application to run. npm CI. Remember, npm is that node package manager. So we'll be using some of those dependencies that we set up. So npm CI. While that's running, I believe I've seen here in the past what npm CI does. Where did I see that? Ah, you know what? Sorry, folks. I'm going to scroll down a little bit because I do remember seeing a little bit lower. Ooh, we still got a way to go, don't we? Here we go. npm CI installs/reinstalls all dependencies and bootstraps the different services. So what this is a series of scripts that will install all of the JavaScript that we need in order to run FreeCodeCamp, as well as sets up any other scripts that are, let's see, Lerna. Yeah, it's running some scripts, running some installs, and setting us up so that we can get up and running with FreeCodeCamp. So that's what that does. Let's go back to that step. Still running here, but let's go back to that step. Here we go. So, and, oh, no, sorry. Yes. The next step is going to be to start MongoDB and seed the database. I'll just read through it while this step is running here. Before you can run the application locally, you will need to start the MongoDB service. Unless you have MongoDB running in a setup different than the default, the URL stored as the Mongo HQ URL in the .env file should work fine. If you're using a custom configuration, modify this value as needed. We will certainly with Jess get into what this MongoDB does and what a database is. But in the meantime, we've already set this up last week and we've got it running there. So we've got already since we set this up with Docker last week, we can actually look on my Docker here. Sorry, it's a bit small, but you can see here that MongoDB is already running. So that's all good. On Windows, you must specify a full path to the MongoDB binary. We don't need to do that because we've already got Yeah, you can avoid having to start MongoDB every time by installing it as a background service. You can learn more about it in their documentation for your OS, which is what we did last week. Next, let's seed the database. In this step, we run the below command that fills the MongoDB server with some initial data sets that are required by services. These include a few schemas amongst other things. Let's hop back to the terminal real quick because I can see here some green success. That's very good. We can see here we added 2,374 packages in about 2 minutes. So we've already set up all of the dependencies. Now we can start running the script to set up the database, which is what this seed command will do. And then we can, I believe, we'll be able to run FreeCodeCamp, but one thing at a time. So let's run npm run seed. But what is this command and where does it come from? So I want to take a second to just jump out real quick back into the code base and into something called the package.json file. If you've worked with JavaScript apps before, you're going to be familiar with this. This is a file that defines everything that lives and breathes inside this project that has to do with JavaScript. So we get the name of the project, FreeCodeCamp, the version, the license. Remember we touched on licenses before. Here we can see those requirements for Node and NPM. Repository, where people can go to file bugs, the author, and here's a set of scripts, and there's quite a few of them. And what's cool about this is that we can define a script in here that we can then run using npm run and then the name of that script. So if we scroll down a little bit, we can actually see that there is one already called seed. And that's the command that's going to run here. Let's have a look at what it does. Cross-env debug fcc boo. It runs Node. Okay, it runs a Node.js script. Tools script seed auth user. So if we go into tools here, scripts. So we've defined a set of scripts here. They've defined a set of scripts here. Seed and seed auth user. So this is the script that's going to run when we run npm run seed. Quite a few things, but we need not worry about what that does just yet until we run it. So let's hit enter here. That was fast. So, see, there we can see what the command was. Cross-env script seed auth user. And connected successfully to Mongo. That's good. Local auth user seed complete in 18 milliseconds. Very cool. So we've set up a local auth user, it would seem. So, step 4. Start the FreeCodeCamp client application and API server. You can now start up the API server and client applications. So npm run develop. So that's going to be another script that's defined here in package.json. I just really like looking at these. So let's take a look at what was it called. Develop. Here we go. npm run all build curriculum p develop star. Well, let's find out what it does, shall we? So, npm run develop. So, this single command will fire up all the services, including the API server and client applications available for you to work on. Once ready, open a web browser and visit this URL, http localhost 8000. If the app loads, congratulations, you're all set. You now have a copy of FreeCodeCamp's entire learning platform running on your local machine. The API server serves APIs at localhost 3000. The Gatsby app serves the client application at localhost 8000. So, this seems to be done. Webhook client is not configured. This can be ignored when not working with webhooks locally. Debugger listening. I guess we should be ready to open up this URL. So I'm just going to copy this link and paste it in here. Oh dear. looks like that didn't run. So let's find out why. If anybody in the chat knows what I missed, please do give me a shout. Client workers building. Maybe it's still building. Webhook client. If you visit localhost 3000 Explorer, you should see the available APIs. Well, let's copy that link address. And see what's going on. Looks like this site cannot be reached either. So something seems to not be connecting. Let's have a look. Just gonna scroll up here a little bit and see what's going on. Maybe the app is still building. Or maybe I missed something. Server Gatsby app serves the application at HTTP localhost 8000. What I usually do is I just shut it down and start it up again, turn it off and on again. Maybe I missed something. Let's give that a try again. Nope. Well. Guess we'll have to take a step back and figure out why this one step isn't working. This single command will fire up all the services, including the API server and client applications available for you to work on. Usually in cases like this, I would guess there might be some kind of issue going on with this here. So what I'm going to propose, folks, is I'm going to stop this, shut down WSL. Yep, shut down WSL. So shut down the Linux running on my computer. Sorry, that's a bit small. Let me just make it a bit bigger. So I'm going to use the command WSL shutdown. Which can take a second. In the meantime, let's talk about Git a little bit. If you're not familiar with Git, Git is a program used for it's called a version control system, and there have been many like it. There's stuff like SVN or Subversion, that's it, Mercurial, and others. And the metaphor that Jess and I came up with is kind of like it's a version control system that's kind of like a digital protocol, and it acts kind of like a choreographer, right? If you can, as I was talking about before, running stuff locally, if you change something locally and somebody else changes the same thing, since you've got your local versions of that code base, nothing will break unless you try to mix them back in. So if both you and somebody else are working on the same code, it allows you to do kind of like the same dance on stage, right? With everything working out fine. And what we can do is allow folks to collaborate asynchronously on code bases and then try to bring these changes together in the form of, for example, pull requests. Back when I was in university, I used to do team projects with groups, and we would use Dropbox for this. And the problem with using Dropbox for this is that since it had a built-in version control system, but it tried to synchronize these files at the same time, a lot of the time when it would not work, it would create a version with my name on it. So it'd be like project.txt Ramon's version, and after a while you would end up with a bunch of versions. And this is what protocols like Git aim to fix. So now that I've shut down Windows Subsystem for Linux, I'm going to start it up again. Cool. Let me just make it big, nice and big again. Now, let's go back to my open source folder and through that to the FreeCodeCamp one. Let's try running npm run again. Wait, Rosanna Rufer here says, I've seen department versioning a device firmware in USBs with tags, with actual manual tags, labels written with a Sharpie. Whew. I'm never complaining about my university work. That sounds intense. Yeah. So let's try running npm run. What was it called again? Develop. So we're running that script again. Fingers crossed we can connect to it. Oh, that looks better. I see some errors. Oh dear. Let's see what we got. Boot donate. Donation disabled in development. Okay. That's not too bad. Let's see if we can start it up. Not yet. But at least we got some progress. Connection. Oh, here we go. Failed to connect to server. Okay, looks like Mongo network isn't working. At TCP wrong. It will be retried for the next request. So it would appear that my Docker connection to MongoDB isn't running. Let's try something. Let's try restarting Docker. Usually turning it off and on again does the trick. So, how do I do that? I think I can do that. Restart. Well, that looks like an error. Let's try the more brute forcey approach. Here we go. Restart Docker. So what I did was I went to my Windows tab here, found the Docker icon, I right-clicked, restart Docker. You're about to restart Docker desktop. All restart stops all running containers. No data will be lost otherwise. Do you want to continue? I absolutely do. So fingers crossed that gets us back up and running. Docker is doing its cute little loading. It's a bit small, but I hope you can see it. Okay, that looks like it's running again. Running, okay. Let's try that again. npm run develop. I pressed, by the way, if you want to rerun, are you trying to, sorry, Rosanna here writes, are you trying to access a MongoDB container from outside the container? Yes, I am. I followed the instructions from, I'm just going to leave that running. I followed the instructions for running on FreeCodeCamp. Oh, here we go. Yeah, sorry, Rosanna Rufer. What we did last week was install MongoDB from Docker Hub, which integrates with WSL. So we installed it with Docker pull Mongo. We started up, and by doing that, it sort of integrates itself as a continuously running service that I can then access from either Windows or WSL, which is pretty cool. But I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. What do you mean by port map? Are you meaning this here? This P flag? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So this port in this case is the access number that we can use to access MongoDB. So this looks good. DB connected. We might be able to connect now. Killed. Oh dear. Here we go. What happened? FreeCodeCamp client failed at... This is probably not a problem with NPM. Oh dear. That's a lot of errors. NPM run all curriculum. A complete log. I wonder what's going on here. I'm gonna try running that npm CI again to set up and get all my npm packages up and running. And while I'm here, I might as well also try and seed the database again. Thanks for your patience, everybody. As you can see, errors come up when trying to run a new code base, and we just got to spend a little bit of time fiddling around and seeing what's going on. So that looks good. Let's go back to our instructions real quick, because we set up MongoDB. That's up and running. Then we ran npm run seed. Let's try that again. Run seed. That looks good. Connected successfully. Local auth user seed complete. And npm run develop. So, fingers crossed. Usually this sort of thing requires a little bit of back and forth, trying to figure out if we did everything right. DB connected. Do I dare? Let's try loading that API page. Well, well, well. Looks like we are not having a lot of... Oh, hello. This looks better. We got something about access token is required for this request. I guess I need to be logged in? That would make sense. Let's try loading the original one. See what happens there. Localhost refused to connect. Phew. Not my day. But part of the fun is doing this live so that everybody can watch me flounder. So, okay. Oh. FreeCodeCamp server listening at port 3000 in development. That's good. But we should also have a port 8000 version running. Right? Once ready, open a web browser and visit localhost 8000. If the app loads, congratulations, you're all set. Let's try that 3000 one just out of curiosity. No. Let's be good citizens. Too many people pretend these things don't happen to them. Absolutely. Rosanna Rufer, you're absolutely right. I think, I mean, a lot of my time spent in my daily work. Can I share the link? Oh, that's very kind. Thank you, Rosanna Rufer. Oh, hello. Looks like we're back on this error. Well, that's very kind. Thank you. Do you mean the link to the contributing guides? I'll copy that to you. Oh, thank you for being so wonderful. Let's see. How do I get to my chat here? Here we go. Cool. Yeah, odd. So we got this error again. So, lifecycle, build workers, node, max old space. Oh, hold on a minute. Error 137. That's familiar. This is, folks, this is going to be a little bit weird, but I think I remember error 137. I think it means 137. Yes, I'm out of RAM. That's it. I've been here before. It just so happens I've been messing around with some Linux stuff before. For full context, I've limited the amount of RAM that my WSL has access to because otherwise it eats too much on my machine. So, we're gonna jump out and see if we can get that working. Bear with me, folks. So, I've got a WSL config file on my computer that I've configured to limit the amount of RAM of my WSL to 3 gigabytes. Silly decision because now it just meant that I couldn't run it. So I'm just going to up that to 8 gigabytes for now. This is going to be a little bit hacky. I'm sorry, folks. Yeah, so now we're going to limit the amount of RAM that my WSL has to 8 gigabytes. And we're going to turn it off and on again. Oh my goodness. Oh. And this was like a few days ago that I was messing around with my settings thinking like, oh yeah, when am I ever going to need more than 3 gigabytes? Turns out I do. So let's restart everything. Docker, let's restart you. Yes. Okay. Let's go back to, what was this again? Coding, open source, FreeCodeCamp. There we go. Cool. Let's just make sure Docker's running again. Are you running, Docker? An update is available. Well, that's nice. I will update. I promise I will update, but later. Cool. Let's try. Fingers crossed. Let me think. When we set up everything, we just gotta run npm run develop. I'm sorry about that. I shouldn't have been messing around with my with my settings. Oh my goodness. Okay. What's this? What you got here? Okay, Mongo doesn't seem to be connected again. Okay. For good measure, let's restart Docker one more time. Oh, I'm so delighted we're getting to mess around with my janky setup. Oh dear. Y'all can't see that I'm sweating a little bit. Okay. So, let's do it again. npm run. Is this running again? Let's have a look. An update is available. Yes, but is MongoDB running? It is not. Aha. Start. Driver failed programming externally connecting on endpoint MongoDB. Error starting userland proxy. Well, that's no good. Let's try running it again. Oh no. Well, that's not good. Okay. Maybe I will download an update. We're gonna update Docker live because why not? Cool. So, is that updating? An update will be applied next time you start Docker desktop. Okay, let's just pin to taskbar here. Now, we're gonna quit Docker desktop. Oh, update and restart. Perfect. Please do. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Oh, goodness. Okay. We're updating Docker live. I always knew I would do this someday. Thanks again for your patience, folks. So, in case you're missing context, the reason we are updating Docker is because we need Docker in order to run our database, which runs on MongoDB. And in order to run FreeCodeCamp, we need to have MongoDB running. So, hopefully that'll finished in just a jiffy. I wonder if actually I want to disable that WSL config file, but I'll do it later. Let's, in the meantime, set up Docker. We're going to go a little overtime today. So, welcome back to Docker. Docker engine starting. MongoDB is running. Whew! All right. Let's try npm run develop. Okay. This looks kind of good. Let's try then. Refreshing. Well, that didn't work. Let's try 3. Oh! Undefined user access token is required for this request. Localhost 3000. Not a brand. Chromium. Looks like we got an error message here to do with FreeCodeCamp. Let me just try running it again. Usually, nope. No luck. What happens if I run this? Token required for this request. Well, looks like we're not going to be having much luck going today, which is unfortunate. Sorry, folks. Oh, hello. This... The following entry points required static sides. Oh, hello. Oh, hold on. Hold on just a moment. Some stuff is running. Usually, it looks like patience really is the key here. Well, this looks a lot better. It looks like FreeCodeCamp wasn't done starting up. Building development bundle. That's a very good sign. Whew. And as you can see, it's a big one. So, just gonna have to give it a moment. Can't believe I recognized error 137 out of RAM. Oh dear. Okay. Well, in the meantime, since we're short on time and I want to let this build, but not, just keep everybody staring at the screen, let's go over what we've covered today before we wrap up and get that big old FreeCodeCamp showing. So we've gone over understanding what it means to run a project locally. We've gone over forking, cloning. We didn't get to cover branches just yet in GitHub, but we'll get to that. And remotes. We've covered understanding what the difference between local and remote is. We've gone over running into a problem, where to go for help. Yep, we ran into some problems today. Following the instructions to run the app. And finally, looks like success building development bundle. Fingers crossed. Oh my goodness. We're running FreeCodeCamp. Whew. All right. let's just cover a couple more instructions here before we wrap up, because your local setup automatically populates a local user in the database. Clicking on the sign in button will automatically authenticate you. Rosanna Rufer, thank you for sticking around and supporting me through this. However, accessing the user portfolio is a little tricky. In development, Gatsby takes over serving the client-side pages, and hence you will get a 404 page of the user portfolio when working locally. Simply clicking Preview Custom 404 Page button will forward you to the correct page. How to sign in when local. And again, this documentation is so friendly that it shows you what to expect when getting up and running, which is fabulous. So let's do it. Without further ado, get started. It's free. Okay. So we are now signed in locally. Remember, what we've got here in my terminal, remember I was talking about remote and local servers? This is a server that's running locally on my computer. So I'm not actually accessing FreeCodeCamp on the internet. This is on my computer. So I can make all the changes I need, which we'll cover in a future episode. Because now I'm afraid we're out of time. And it has been a ride. Thank you, folks, for joining in. We'll be back next week, as we are every week. And a little bit of a preview of what we'll be doing. We'll be getting a little bit more into looking for issues, looking for stuff to work on, and starting to make these actual changes, and how to integrate these into our Git workflow. So, without much left to be said, I just want to say thank you all for joining in. I wish you the most wonderful week. I'll be setting up a raid shortly. And yeah, keep on enjoying some open source software hacking, and have a good one. Thanks, everybody.